With the release of Soul yesterday, we now have 23 films inside of the Pixar list. So today, I thought it was time for me to stomp and rank all 23 Pixar films ranked from the worst to the best. Hey everyone, SW Nation here, and welcome back to a brand new ranking here on the channel. If you like this video, please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And please know that everything that I will say in this video is just my very own opinion. My list is certainly not the right list. It is just my list, and you are free to comment down below your list of all 23 Pixar films ranked from the worst to the best, just like me, or you could just do your favorite. Now, without further ado, let's get into my ranking. Kicking off my list at number 23 has got to go to The Good Dinosaur. This film has gorgeous animation, but a familiar plot and an unlikable lead. Like, the plot is just so familiar. It's about a kid just being brave. I'm like, okay, we've seen that before. Literally, a Pixar movie is called Brave. And also, going back to the unlikable lead, Arlo is just so annoying. He's so whiny. I just do not like his character. I think that he is the worst character in any Pixar film. And the film just seems so boring, scenes after scenes. The only good thing is, of course, the animation, which Pixar is known for, and the depth of Arlo's dad. And also, I really do like Spot, but everything else I just do not like. Coming in at number 22 for me has got to go to Cars 2. Now, this is the most watched Pixar film that I've ever seen. I love this film. Like, when I first got it, I loved this film. And I still do, but I just cannot deny that this film has problems. I cannot deny that this is not a departure from the last film. Just from the start, sidelining our main character and focusing on a side comedic relief character just does not really fit well inside of this whole entire franchise of Cars films, especially with the first Cars film being so tonally different from this one. But I mean, an overall spy Cars movie is cool and it should work, but it just feels like a direct-to-DVD sequel. Coming in at number 21 for me has got to go to Brave. I love the themes of expectations and writing your own destiny. It works for me personally. And I love the relationship between Merida and her mother and how it grows throughout the entire film. Just everything going back to that relationship, just the overall characters, the overall themes, everything works for me inside of this film. But it is definitely one of the most forgettable Pixar films in my opinion, just because of sometimes it is kind of boring. Kicking off my top 20 list has got to go to Monsters University, another film that deserves to be a direct-to-DVD sequel. It just retcons the first film with a cliche and predictable story based on Revenge of the Nerds. This prequel should have worked. It should have been a good prequel to Monsters, Inc. and tell a great story about friends and their upcoming and their relationships, but unfortunately, it just does not meet the expectations that it should have. But it does have colorful animation, and it is pretty enjoyable while watching. You just wouldn't put it on that much. Coming in at number 19 for me has got to go to Finding Dory. She's a likable character. I love her character, actually. And the film has great animation, just takes a dive right back into the ocean of Finding Nemo. I just really love the animation in this film. It's very bright, and I feel like this is more rewatchable, more easy to put on than Finding Nemo. But it never quite lives up to that original of Finding Nemo with the themes and the story. And definitely not in a way that's satisfying. But it is definitely a fine movie. I would even go far as to say it is very good. Coming in at number 18 for me has got to go to A Bug's Life. This is the most forgettable film, and not because it's bad, it's just not the film people talk about as much. I personally love this film. It is such a great story touching on certain themes like colonialism. I just think that A Bug's Life is an enjoyable Pixar film, but it never quite gets the recognition that it deserves. And granted, I did first see this movie last year after Toy Story 4 came out, so I can do a ranking last year, so you guys can check that out up above if you want to see how different my rankings have changed. But yeah, I do love A Bug's Life. People just don't talk about it as much. Coming in at number 17 for me has got to go to Cars, a film that I think is very watchable. I really do have a lot of nostalgia for this film. It's a classic story about a big city kid learning to slow down, take a load off, and just enjoy life in a small town with a lot of country folk. With great dynamic animation, I love the racing scenes inside of this film, and it has a very cool voice cast. I love all of the characters inside of Radiator Springs. I think Mater is a nice addition, a nice comedic relief character for this type of story, and I really do love this movie, but it is very familiar. Coming in at number 16 for me has got to go to Onward, a fun film about brothers which I can personally relate to. I love the fact that this film just has emphasis on the relationship between these two brothers because, like I said, I can relate to that. When I'm looking at this film, it reminds me of the relationship between me and my brother. It's just a great film that has a lot of family dynamics inside of it. The magical, fantastical adventure with an interesting story about two brothers trying to bring their dad back for just 24 hours to have just a heart-to-heart conversations, just to see their dad again for 24 hours is a great idea with amazing animation and very great world building. The only reason why I have it at number 16 is because I just wouldn't rewatch it that much. I would just find some other Pixar movie to watch that has those type of elements. Maybe The Incredibles. Kicking off my top 15 list has got to go to Cars 3. Just like the first Cars, I loved this movie. I know a lot of people do not like it. A lot of people just hate it. They find it familiar. They just do not like this movie, but I love this movie. I think that this movie has a great story about Lightning McQueen becoming, air quotation marks, old and learning to decide whether to mentor or to keep racing. It's very reminiscent of Talladega Nights and also Rocky 3, with Lightning having to change the way he races now since there's a new generation of cars coming in. I just think all of that works for the story that they were going for, but at times it does seem a little bit too predictable. But other than that, every film starting from this and up, I very much love those films. Coming in at number 14 for me has got to go to Wall-E, a beautiful love story between two robots that work as both a romance and a 21st century silent film. I love the themes inside of this film, but going back to it being just a silent movie, the first 45 minutes are just the little sound effects of Wall-E or like the sound effects of just Trash or Eve. I just think that the relationship between these two robots make them feel human, but at the same time so robotic and so weird and just so sci-fi at the same time. So I think that this film overall is very good, very great, but it is pretty boring at times. Coming in at number 13 for me has got to go to Coco. A Trip to the Land of the Dead was an amazing, gorgeous animated journey that was filled with color, vibrancy, heart, and great music. Obviously, the twists inside of there did kind of feel a little bit predictable, but when I watched it, I thought the twist was pretty good. I just think that everything revolving around the themes and just expectations, I just really do love what they did inside of this film, and very much it has one of the most heartfelt moments at the end with Miguel coming back into the real world and singing Remember Me to his great grandma Coco. So I really did love this film as someone who just saw it last year after Toy Story 4, but I think that this film is just really good, and up to that point I've only heard great things. This film also tackles death and the land of the living in a way that kids can also understand and very much enjoy. Coming in at number 12 for me has got to go to Ratatouille. The idea of a rat cooking food by controlling a human with his hair should not work, but Brad Bird made it work. It has great animation, elegant storytelling, and handles the concept amazingly in a way that seems more mature, but also adult. I just think that this film works on so many levels, as it taking this weird and crazy idea that could have backfired on Pixar and made it turn into one of the best films inside of their series. Coming in at number 11 for me has got to go to Up. Now, Up is not a film that is easy to put in. I was not excited to rewatch this film for this rewatch for the ranking, but I gotta say, I really did enjoy this film the third time around, because this is my third time watching it. The third time around than I did my other two times. Just the fantastical adventure through South America is great and very character devoted. I love the first 10 minutes of this film. It's some of the best visual storytelling in any animated film, and just the way that the story is told about an elderly man who loses his wife and just gets this crazy idea, what if I just go away? I just go away in a house with balloons carrying me to South America and just to live out the rest of my days on Paradise Falls. I really do think that that is such an interesting story and also a very emotional one. But the villain inside of the film just kind of does not work for me. Kicking off my top 10 list has got to go to Toy Story 2. Just a great trip to the toy box again. I love seeing new toys like Jessie and Bullseye coming into the mix. And I just love seeing Woody and Buzz just switch places, as Buzz being the one taking the leadership role, leading the charge to go rescue Woody after he has been kidnapped. And just Woody seeing himself as something more than just a child's plaything. And I really do love what this movie did with the characters themselves. Now, I don't think that this is the best Toy Story movie. I think this is actually the worst one, but I very much do love this film, and this is the most rewatched Toy Story film I think that I've ever watched, either this one or the first one. But then again, the memory is a little bit foggy because I grew up with those films, so I very much love Toy Story 2, but I just do not find it that rewatchable as the other ones. Coming in at number 9 for me is the new addition to the Pixar family, Soul. I really do love this film, what this film does, just bring in the different concepts of death and life and just finding your purpose. I really do love those aspects of this film. It's very much a celebration of life with great animation that handles the idea in an adult way that may or may not work for kids. Coming in at number 8 for me has got to go to Toy Story 3. When this film first came out in theaters, I saw it and I loved it, and I love it to this day. A lot of people don't like it as much as the first two or even the fourth one, but I really do think that Toy Story 3 is a great Toy Story film. Pixar was bold enough to tell a story about what happens when a toy's owner grows up and what happens to that toy. I really do love the dynamics between Woody and the toy. I really do love everything about the prison breakout storylines. Just all in all, I really do love this film and what it did. And I think that these are the best Toy Story designs, even better than Toy Story 4. I think every toy inside of this film, their designs are the best designs out of any Toy Story film. I think the villain is very great. Probably not the best, but I really do love the villain. And just overall, this perfectly ends the Andy trilogy in a way that was very much satisfying. So where if the Toy Story saga just ended right here, it was perfect. Coming in at number 7 for me has got to go to Inside Out. Just an interesting take on a question that a lot of people do ask. What is going on inside others' heads? And I really do love the way Pixar represented that inside of a teenage girl. She has different emotions that go up and down, from rage to fear to sadness to happiness to even disgust. I love the characters inside of this film. They're all dynamic. They all have their different personalities because that's what they are. They're emotions, so they have these different characteristics. It has very great colorful animation. I think that this is just the most colorful film inside of any Pixar film. If I had to choose a world to just live in, I would rather choose the Inside Out world, just live with those emotions, or like to just live inside of headquarters with the emotions. I think that would be very cool. Nice little spacious area. And I just love the way that this film gets so creative, the way it helps you understand your emotion. I see a lot of people comparing this to Soul, but I think this one is just way better on so many levels. It's just such a great, fun, original story that helps the younger audience understand themselves a lot better. Coming in at number 6 for me has got to go to Monsters, Inc. This has just great world building, a great message about don't judge a book by its cover, because the monsters are more afraid of us than we are of them. Just the nostalgia of watching this movie on a bootleg copy, just it hits home for me. When I see it on Disney Plus in like a 4K Ultra HD, this like, wow, I used to watch this on a bootleg disc that used to be so scratched up. But I just love the way that this has great characters, a great duo in Mike and Sully, and I really do enjoy what this film does with an original take on a classic story about monsters hiding underneath the bed or in your closet. Kicking off my top 5 list has got to go to Incredibles 2. Just a film that rolled off the fact that I had nostalgia for the first one. I just really love the fact that this film just has gorgeous cinematic animation with great action sequences that makes it look like a real blockbuster. I love the fact that Brad Bird took his time with this film, giving us the Incredibles film that we actually needed instead of wanted, just a rushed sequel that would have made $1 billion for nostalgia reasons. But I find that this one was better because it had a more clear story than the first one. But I do think that The villain was a little bit too predictable. I love the fact that it has great things about these superheroes legal again. I think that worked perfectly. And also, yeah, the family dynamics inside of this film worked again. Jack is a great comedic relief character. Just overall rolled off the fact that I have nostalgia for the first one. Coming in at number 4 for me has got to go to Finding Nemo, and this is where we start getting into the best of the best, the greatest of all time of all of the Pixar films, because Finding Nemo is a really great story about an overprotective father trying to get his son back. This film was doing something that many animation films are not doing nowadays, but telling an entertaining story, an interesting story, but also an emotional one that has very much depth. Kicking off my top 3 list has got to go to Toy Story. Now, I go back and forth between this or my number 1. My number 2 always stays the same, but my number 1 and this one, I go back and forth on those a lot. But this time, I have to go with Toy Story being my number 3. Now, I just love this film. Just a great set of characters, great voice acting all around. Just a first trip look into the toy box, seeing this fully CG animated movie that never been done before. Just works for me on so many levels. I just love the scenes inside of the bedroom with them just awing, drooling out the mouth, looking at this new toy, a space ranger, taking over the entire room, and just like seeing the naiveness of Buzz Lightyear for the first time, and also seeing the jealousy of Woody as him being the favorite toy of Andy, but also Buzz coming in and kind of taking over that spot. I really do think that is great. And also, this film just makes you think about your toys, makes you think, what if my toys come alive when I'm not there? I just think that this is an interesting story and a great start to an amazing franchise out of Pixar, and also still one of the best Pixar films to this day. My runner-up at number 2 has got to go to The Incredibles. Just a very cool, stylistic 60s spy vibe. I really do love what they did with this film, just taking an interesting take on these superheroes and kind of turning it around. I love the family dynamics, just everything going on with like Helen and Bob, Helen thinking that Bob is cheating, just stuff like that. I really do love. And as I grow older, I now see the adult jokes inside. I now see the not so kid friendly jokes that I didn't really understand when I first watched this film. Just see this superhero family have these relatable problems of arguments and marriage problems. Just worked for me on so many levels. And it's not even more so a kids film, it's more just an adult film that has an appeal to kids. But coming in at my number 1, you probably already guessed this, Toy Story 4. Like I said, I go back and forth with this one and my number 3, because last time I ranked all the Pixar films, I had Toy Story 1 at number 1, but I just think that after watching Toy Story 4 for this rewatch, Toy Story 4 pulled the right emotions for me. Just like Incredibles 2, this film mainly works on nostalgia, but at the same time, it just was an amazing trip to the toy box again, but actually working as an epilogue to Woody's arc, this being the movie that solidified that Woody actually had an arc from the beginning of the first Toy Story that went through Toy Story 2, Toy Story 3, and ended in this one, whereas the first 3 movies was the Andy trilogy, how the toys reacted to Andy growing up and eventually giving them away to Bonnie. And now we go to the toys perspective, and we go to the favorite toy of Andy, Woody, how he feels about Andy giving them away, and just him learning that it's just time for him to move on. Just a great story, gorgeous animation. This is the best animated Pixar film in my opinion. Just everything about this film works for me, especially closing out the Woody arc in a way that was emotional as well as earned. So it has to come in at number 1. Alright guys, that was it for the ranking. Please note that everything that I did say in this video was just my very own opinion. My list was certainly not the right list, it was just my list. And you are free to comment down below your ranking of all 23 Pixar films ranked from the worst to the best, just like me, or you could just do your favorite. Like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you guys next time. Peace.